Welcome to a general skate review around midway-ish through Season 4 of the Early Access. I don't think Season 5 starts till late August, so there's not a whole heck of a heap to say about that. Yeah, it's all to say of what we know for now, and what we know for now is just kind of meh. I mean, as you can see by the title, even from the very beginning of officially talking about it, which was September of last year, and I started actually playing it around July of last year. That's why I'm making the video. I can't remember the exact date, but yeah, I just got lucky. I think it was just crapshoot with that. For 99% of people who registered, only the very top of the skate, famous people on the internet got it, other than the developers. But anyway, I just got lucky to get into that. But honestly, there's nothing really to say about that. I don't think you're really officially supposed to say specifics about that even now, but there's not a whole heck of a heap to even say. So yeah, after playing for a year now, there's basically what you see is what it is. It's a whole heck of a heap of glitches until there isn't. You do the glitches, there's variations of them. I mean, there's a whole spreadsheet that people like Cypress made that has literal hundreds of glitches, but the thing with that is a lot of those glitches are very much hard to do or need to be specific spots. The majority over time have actually been patched, so yeah, I think pretty much of what you see glitches on my channel can be fairly replicatable. Maybe not in the exact way of the exact contortions of the body or whatever it may be, but I don't really focus on the glitch of the week type thing, because one week it may work and the next it don't for the most part. But I mean, for me, that's been the main part of skate. Actually, has been exploiting the glitches and stuff. That tends to be how I am of gaming in general, unless it was something outright amazing and probably at one time. Only thing like the car launch glitch in July 2024, I think it was, for GT7 and that sort of thing. Usually I'll focus on more well-known stuff and then try and fine-tune it to get something new out of it. I'm not saying I've never found anything 100% purely really unique in any game. There's always going to be the occasional thing of GTA 5. I find a random glitch with a random car combination in an area, or Goat Simulator, that random where I fell off the map. I didn't see anything specific about it, but that's usually not my goal. My goal is to know of what's there and then try and find a specific use of it instead of finding something truly new. Mainly on what's my channel with skate is what ends up being called the disassociation glitch, where your skater actually is of other people looking, and it isn't actually where it ends up in the replay. So it's disassociated between what is seen and then what actually happens. So that's when you get the weird contortions and things like that. And I've played skate for, I think it's around 75 hours. And genuinely, I think at least 50 of those were trying to just mess with glitches and all that. And actually, that's 75 hours of the main game since it released. I guess it probably is about 100 hours now, counting the 2 months before. The 2 months before it came out, I didn't really want to mess with the story, because even by then people were saying it was bad, and I definitely didn't want to play it twice because I knew the progress didn't carry over. But I also didn't really bother with glitches because who knows what was going to get patched by the time you could officially record gameplay. So I actually did most of my skating a year ago, and I've never been anything particularly good with skate in any skate, and this one definitely included. But for whatever it's worth, that's another plus of the game as well, the skating physics as well. While I can't really showcase it in super glorious ways or anything, the skating physics is pretty much anyone says, no matter if it is a new person to a casual, just mess around skate type person, to an absolute skate professional who actually skateboards, to those that do the crazy stunt videos and all that in a very much unrealistic way. Anyway, anyone and everyone pretty much unanimously does agree that actual skateboard physics and skate, period, not for whatever you want, are actually great. And yeah, I agree. And arguably, that is the most important thing of a skateboarding game, is to have good physics. But It's also what to be the most expected. There hasn't really been a skateboarding game that has succeeded that has had universally bad physics. Like sometimes it'll happen in a car game, like The Crew 2. The worst part of it was the physics. Even what's considered a unanimously amazing game like Gran Turismo 4, arguably the worst thing about Gran Turismo 4 was the physics. In the stock form, the cars would understeer, and there's a whole heck of videos of people failing the missions or whatever it may be. They're understeer and things like that. But that I know of, there hasn't been a skate game that's been like overall considered bad physics that has been successful. Either it's something realistic like the modern Sessin and Skater XL, or something incredibly wacky and intuitive for its time, while not all realistic, very much fun like the Tony Hawk game. The games that failed usually had bad physics, like Pro Skater 5 or games along that line. So while it's great that it has great physics, that's almost to be expected to have a skateboarding game succeed. And overall, I think Skate is succeeding. It seems to have around 20 million or so players in total, and while there isn't exactly the greatest retention rate, that's for sure, it's probably not even a million players a week anymore from what it seems like. We don't know absolutely certain because the only numbers that are specific are through PC, and the main player base is on console, but still, pretty good guess by seeing its rankings amongst other games, and with some of the games will announce how many players they have specifically for console. Go with that. Like there's the monthly console rankings for like how popular the game is relative to other games for its console. The sort of just go by general through that. But I mean, 20 million players for a free game is great. I mean, it's still very much successful, but it really ultimately depends on how many people buy the macrotransactions, and the macrotransactions are ultimately the main flaw with it. That's pretty much unanimous as well, and I very much agree. While, of course, there's going to be macrotransactions in a free game, and it is nice that there isn't any that directly actually make you skateboard better. But again, that's to be expected. If there was, the game would have outright failed. So, of course, they can done it. When about the cheapest stuff you could possibly buy now is $5, and the most expensive ends up being around 70 now, just for cosmetics. It's outright insane. That's everybody here agrees that's a failure. Most people outright will admit it's a failure, and then the people who are paid by Skate to not say anything bad will just gloss over it and not particularly talk about the negatives of it. I mean, some of them, sadly, are even paid by Skate to actually specifically mention the cosmetics and make it look incredible and stuff, but those are the people you immediately write off. The sad part is there's too many that I can remember off the top of my head. A lot of that comes down to I don't watch them either, thus, so I don't remember them as much, but I mean, that's another thing too, is that there's just not as much content being made about Skate nowadays. When the game came out through maybe Christmas or so, 2025, they're probably on board, on pace to where Skate was ultimately going to get as much content as Skate 3. The peak of Skate 3 probably had about as much as Skate did at launch, that sort of thing. But the player base really dwindled after Christmas, so it was already falling somewhat by then, but there wasn't even anything absolutely specific that did it, but just a combination of more people being aware of the macrotransactions, not really a whole heck of a heap being done in terms of important updates throughout the game. They changed little bits of skate parks and things like that, and then ultimately the Isle of Grom was quote unquote added when 80% of that was just a starter tutorial island that you couldn't actually ever go back to, so that was incredibly stupid as well. And then even the ultimate nail in the coffin for me with that is they lied about that. From maybe even 2020 or so onwards, the whole point of this freemium game is they said, while yes, there would be paid cosmetics and things like that, there would never be payments needed to play portions of the game itself, meaning areas of it or like stadium or things like that. And lo and behold, what ended up happening is all of Grom, for the first month, you could only use it by paying real money. So they outright lied about that. And then ultimately, it still ends up that you have to use in game currency to even access it every time you want to access it. So, thus, while technically it's free to access, eventually you're going to run out of currency, and a lot of times quicker than not, especially for how many people play the game. Most people don't really want to play the game to just do the various boring weekly challenges that are, for the most part, copy and paste, not exactly so original. A little bit can just be done by general skateboarding, but most of what you end up getting in terms of the ticks or whatever has to be absolutely specifics, like you go to the specific challenge and do the specific thing or whatever, and that just gets real tedious. Real quick, that's not exactly a mass on skate specifically. There's a lot of games with this monotonous weekly task. Forza with the getting the amount of points to get the cars per week, or Gran Turismo with the mostly recycled weekly challenges. I mean, even back as early as Gran Turismo 5 with GT, some of those seasonal events would recycle as the game got older. So, yes, we've seen this game as a service thing for 15 plus years, depending on the specific game or franchise you want to look at it, but it's still not particularly the smartest business model because once it's existed for 15 or so years, people probably been complaining about it for at least 10 now. So ultimately, yes, the model probably would have died if people quit paying money for it, but it's one of those things too. It's how can they tell what people are paying for? Are they paying it because they appreciate the developers and saying, hey, cool, keep on with these weekly challenges, or are they paying it just to get a stupid cosmetic because it's a 10-year-old and they want the dim bone things that has the damage model and stuff to it? Dim bones, by the way, was free in Skate 3. So there's that to be considered as well. I have a feeling it's definitely more the latter than the former of that. It's even doubly sad with that too, because I mean, as I've said in previous videos, I don't see any way, shape, or form in which having some DLCs cost as much as $70 gets the most profit for the company either. Why would more ultimate money be made for $70 cosmetic that barely anyone buys instead of making it maybe 10 or something for the highest end, 5 for the medium, and then maybe like $1 or 2 for the cheapest individual stuff, instead it's between like 5 and 70, and when realistic I think it should be between like $1 or $2 and 10, because remember there's going to be new cosmetics per season forever. We're already going on to season 5 at this point pretty soon, so that's at this point 70 times 4 for only the main stuff, and then who knows how much it ends up being, counting all the miscellaneous small stuff, probably at this point already before the game is even officially released, over $1,000. I wouldn't be surprised if you want to get all the cosmetics. So that's incredibly depressing. Another thing with that too is they're actually starting to gatekeep behind real world money some of the props. I don't think they ever said specific they would or wouldn't gatekeep props, but it's still very much annoying they are, because props are things you like tangibly skate on or to be used for decoration or whatever. It's more than just what's on the character. It's between like ambience to outright skating. I can't remember what specifically they're gatekeeping, but I think it's a little bit some of all of it. Some just outright obvious skate things like ramps or rails to things that can sort of kind of be used of that, like benches or like signs and stuff that you should jump off of, like a rail or ramp to a rail type thing, or like cosmetic bouncy things like you saw with the free stuff. They gave the bouncy stuff, the ones that are the blue and the red. There's other ones there too. They gatekeeping a lot of things like that. So that's incredibly depressing as well, because that means that there's going to be some stuff that people pay money to skate that's ultimately going to be more fun and flowing and look better and all that than just the base stuff that without money is going to have. So while technically it's not making the skateboarder itself better, like pay to win type thing, it's pay to have more fun, because I guarantee they're putting a lot more work into making the stuff you have to pay money more like flowing and ultimately fun to skate. I guarantee you. And again, that ultimately goes to, remember how I said a stadium before. That's even like now into season 4. The gimmick of season 4 is the stadium with the Xbox sponsorship that leaked way before it should not, and all that. So yes, ultimately we finally get a stadium like we've had since Skate 1. Skate 1, I think, even had the Xbox sponsorship out of the box, no extra money, or that wasn't even a DLC, I don't think. Skate 1 just had it already in like 2007, or almost 20 years ago. They managed to figure it out back then, and that was when X Games was a lot more popular. So yeah, that's quite depressing there. But ultimately, yeah, so that stadium is incredibly underwhelming as well. And again, had to be pay to play for the first month or so, and even still have to use in-game currency to do that too. Once you run out of quite quickly, thus then you would have to pay more money to get more of that currency. So not only are they gatekeeping like extra stuff beyond the main city, they're even doing stuff in the main city that had been there in some degree since the very first game. And the stadium itself also is quite unimpressive. There's no mega ramp or anything crazy like that. There's glitches that you can be done where you can have a whole heck of a heap of speed. There's tons of speed glitches, like I said. There's a whole spreadsheet of things at work. But for those that want to play it realistically, it's barely even anything. You barely even like pop off the ground unless you do an ollie or something like that. There's barely any natural speed you truly carry through it. And I don't mind if that was just one section of the whole big thing, because some people like the slower speeds and the more like transition type skating, whatever, that's fine. But when there's a stadium that from the very beginning had mega ramps and stuff, and I mean, X Games have been doing a mega ramp for a lot longer than Skate did. I'm pretty sure Danny Way made one in his backyard that also was in Skate 1 for that matter, too, even before Skate. So people had it in their backyard in real life before Skate has it now, and that's incredibly depressing with that, too. And then just not to mention as well, just so many things missing from previous games that so many others have discussed too. There's still no even talks of death races I know of. There's eventually going to be on the spot, and there's been a little bit leaks of that, but on the spot really isn't all that much different than throwdown, so that's barely even an upgrade. There's still no official Hall meet, especially not in a competitive way. And a whole heck of a heap more in there too. There's a lot of various modes like 1-up and things I didn't particularly do. I'm pretty sure it took them a while to even get the skate game mode in Skate to where you copy the trick the other person does. Even that wasn't at the quote unquote release. But I mean, to end off though, that's the biggest thing more than anything. The game is not officially released. I can't help but think, especially because remember EA changed around companies too. They're owned by some foreign thing, but then also mixed with like Jared Kushner or somehow related in this combination of confusing stuff that's hard for even the common person to understand who owns EA now, because it's so many like slush funds and trust and combination of ownership to where no one owns more than a few percent or whatever. There's been a thing for a while where usually it's done with movies and TV shows can be written off tax exempt if they end up completely becoming inaccessible. Sometimes it was even done before they were even officially out. I can't help but think, well, I don't know a specific example of it being used in gaming, but especially where EA changed ownership after Skate was in early access. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Skate doesn't even officially come out. What they're probably going to try and do is, if it's even legal to do, who knows? It might depend on country by country. I don't know. I don't even know if EA is considered an American company anymore, or Full Circle who made it. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not sure anyone really knows for sure. That's point. It might not even be public information. But again, the point being is y'all can probably see where this is going. Despite the making many millions of dollars, probably closer to billion than zero, I'll put it that way, from macrotransactions, they're probably going to ultimately try and have the game be considered a tax write-off because it never officially released, and obviously there were no outright sales to say success or not. That's going to be what they say is, oh, we predicted the sales would be too low because there's not sales of the game itself because it's a freemium type thing. And they can say, oh, we weren't ever able to get it to release because this is technically early access, even though they go from nickel and diming in the good old days to $5 and $10 billing us now, and that's the very minimum of it. So, I mean, yeah, again, it's ultimately season by season. There's not as much changes as the vast majority of people would have wanted. There's very little to do on a day by day basis because ultimately the challenges are very much copy and paste, repeat, and even those of what you get aren't really worth the time and effort. Not even just that they're boring, just the amount of currency you get from them. And I would say the game is better than it was at, in like September of last year. I did an initial review and I said that for a like free modern game in the way that the modern gaming industry works, it's about a 4 out of 10. Right now, I guess I'll give it about a 5 out of 10 because a few things have improved. They've added various tricks like finger flips and impossibles. They've done some slight tweaks to the map and the graphics. They've fixed some various glitches, although a lot of the glitches people were enjoying. So that, so, like, for every glitch that needed to be fixed, they fixed. They take two out that people were enjoying. But ultimately, you could say that's theoretically because they want to add competitive stuff like on the spot or whatever. But more and more, it's even looking like for the future when they add the quote unquote competitive stuff, but nothing's outright confirmed yet. A lot of the on the spot stuff is already leaked. Some people have actually already did it because the development of it leaked into the um this general lobbies, like not for developers or playtesters or whatever, just that anyone can do at random point. It doesn't even seem like the on the spot gets you any of the currency, so there's no actual progression to it. It's basically almost completely like a throwdown, which almost no one does anymore, is there's no actual progression to it. And if that's going to be how on the spot is, like the mainly done game mode in terms of all of online skate throughout the years, skate 1, 2, 3, all of them, on the spot was the most popular. That doesn't bode well for if eventually, and it's more if than when, we get death races or Hall of Meat or whatever. If there's no actual progression that can be done with that, that's gonna be dead on arrival. So the future ain't really looking all that bright. The current time barely looks better than it was before, but again, a 5 out of 10 is not outright bad. If you just want to play a free game to enjoy the skating, Skate is good. If that's all you want to do is just play it for however long you're entertained just purely by the skating, yeah, there you go. I mean, if you want to, you can do your best to ignore the macrotransactions and things like that. There is like a specific page to it, just like on the main menu, never scroll to that page. You can turn the V, like the narrator type thing, off if you want. You don't have to do like the quote unquote story mode. That's barely even story at all. Pretty much beyond once you get like to the main game itself and beyond the tutorial island. Although you might want to stay on the tutorial island longer because ultimately you would need a lot of in-game currency to go back there. So take your time on the tutorial island because it's 80% the same as what you'd ultimately go back to. Anyway, but yeah, the point being is that skating in a skateboard game is maybe the most important part, but it's also the most obvious there too. So I can't really give too many points for what should be very much obvious. And I mean, there's other miscellaneous things that are cool enough. I mean, the actual like fabrics and stuff have physics to them, like the shoelaces or sort of move around, and then the baggy pants kind of do their own thing. The hair physics aren't really that bad. So I mean, edits and stuff can be made once you turn off the weird graphics and stuff, where it looks very much realistic skating and all that. Or other edits can be made to make it look insanely extreme, and you can mess with the FOV settings and things like that. So where yeah, it can look as realistic or extreme as you want after some edits and stuff. Oh, also that's a thing they have upgraded the replay system and editor, but I wouldn't say even at this point it's anything better than Skate 3, but still, it's better than it was at the quote unquote launch in September, the launch of early access. But, I mean, yeah. Obviously, still, at this point, I much rather would have just paid $70 for True Skate 4. That would have been at least an 8 out of 10 of mostly complete. Obviously, knowing EA, whether it's the old owners or new owners, there would definitely have been microtransactions to that as well, but it wouldn't have been the game structured around it. I really don't think they would have gatekept something like, oh, it's 80% of the same as the tutorial island from people and things like that. $70 for an 8 out of 10 game we'd waited 15 plus years for seems worth it. And that's just an example. Maybe it'd be better. Granted, if it was all that much worse, it wouldn't have paid money either. I doubt it would have got Skate 4 for the normal price of a game. Nowadays, if it's anything worse than maybe a 7 out of 10 on release, that's for sure. But that's even me having tons of rose colored glasses. Because it's usually I'm not going to give 7 out of 10 anyway. Just Skate as a franchise I have so much experience with, but maybe I would have considered it, but that's all water under the bridge now because it's never going to be that way. We might genuinely never even get a true skate game again, like with a story mode, offline mode that you actually pay money up front for complete, or at least 90 or so percent complete game. At this current point, Skate is far from even as complete as when Skate 3 was when it launched, and Skate 3 had a notorious, very much glitchy, buggy launch and things like that, so there's certainly that to be considered. And there's no guarantees that it's even going to fully release. Because this is still, even after basically a year, early access. They're still milking everyone for as much money as could possibly get. And we don't even know publicly how much money that is. We don't know if Skate is turning a profit or. You'd think with 20 or so million players, yeah, they would definitely be, but who knows? What I would think would almost be a guarantee that given in the old days that Skate 1, 2, and 3 were profitable, I mean, obviously 1 and 2 were because they got a game made after them, and 3 sold more than 1 and 2 by like double the amount, so you'd think 3 would have been profitable too. Just ultimately what happened is that studio as a whole wasn't profitable. So they shut it down, and then take that as you may if that was a good idea or not, but that wasn't about the skate game in general being unprofitable. The point being is they obviously would have turned a profit if they just made a true Skate 4, but it's too late for that now. Ultimately, I don't know. Maybe the people who were initially developing Skate, not 4, saw the writing on the wall and was aware that EA as a company was failing. I mean, ultimately, EA got sold, so maybe they realized that they just didn't really have the resources to make a good full game, so they didn't bother. Who knows? Maybe that's what it is. We're probably never going to know for sure, because ultimately, with it being a different company now, a lot of the people who were the initial developers and such for the game in, say, like 2020 or 2021 or whatever ain't there anymore. So, yeah, there's that to be considered as well. And remember, too, at the end of my initial review of Skate, I figured, oh, it should have the potential to be about a 7 out of 10 or so. Genuinely, at that point, as little as I've ever liked the game, and I've done videos throughout the year of that, I thought the way that they were going to end up doing it is that once we got to competitive modes, you would earn some online something or another for it. Maybe unlock outfits, maybe earn currency, whatever maybe. But now it's looking like that's not going to happen. I didn't figure they were going to gatekeep um, new skatable areas behind a paywall because they literally said they weren't going to do that. Now that they are, initially I said that its peak would be about a 7 out of 10. Now I think its peak is about a 6 out of 10. I mean, obviously, just having the distance of on the spot, and especially something like Death Race and Hollow Me, because it's quite a bit different when on the spot is quite similar to Third Eye. It's still better than not having it all, even if you're not really progressing and it's half-assed. It's still better than not at all. But it's still very much sad to say that now at this point, I genuinely think the peak of what Skate could ever be, and that's not saying it will ever be, because for all we know, it might not be around even a year from now, is a 6 out of 10 for a free game in the modern gaming era. I don't even know what I would rate it in terms of like all video games ever. I hate the modern gaming era so much, it's hard for me to even say. Some people have different opinions on the modern game. Some people say, oh, all this macrotransaction is actually good for the consumer because people like me who don't buy them, well, some of that money goes back into the game. So ultimately, for the people that don't pay that money, they're ultimately still getting free stuff later on that they wouldn't have because some of that money they make goes back into the game, back to making the development better, back to making more game modes, whatever. But my counter argument to that is maybe ultimately the money might go back in the game to add stuff later. Maybe just maybe they could have just had everything in there from the start of a paid game. Yeah, that's my argument to that. So yeah, we're never gonna know for sure because realistically, I don't think we're ever gonna have a paid skate game ever again. So yeah, that's incredibly depressing with that. But I mean, again, ultimately, I rather we have a skate than not. I mean, it's definitely the worst of all of the skate games that has been able to miss on the series as a whole. But there's just so incredibly much hype around it, and the skating physics themselves are good, and it made a lot of fun videos to watch in terms of the insane skating or edits to make it look realistic, any and all in between. That it's still people getting the most out of the good parts of it has made it overall a worthwhile experience. But it, when all you can say is it's just a slight benefit in terms of such a famous franchise that has been talked about on the internet so much in the last 15 years, way more than any other skateboarding game like internet type culture ever. In terms of legacy media, maybe you could still make an argument Tony Hawk Pro Skater was a bit more, but definitely internet culture skate. It's incredibly sad. And I have no idea how much longer Skate will be here. If ultimately Skate is still around another 3 or 4 more years, whether it counts as a quote unquote for release or not, then it's still probably a plus. I'm sure I'll play miscellaneous here and there. But in terms of consistently playing it, I mean, you can see by videos it's not as much. But the bulk of the glitches that are more repetition type thing and not just in there 1 week and gone the next type thing, I've done now. I've gotten everything that I can out of what parts of the game I enjoy, which again is mainly the glitches and stuff. And you could argue that's a good feature too, that quote unquote return to theory. Is a lot of the fun with theory was the stupid glitches and stuff because it was on a render where gaming engine that was from the 90s and a game in 2011. This, I don't even really think we know what the engine was. I think they just purposely messed some stuff up. So there were some glitches, but a lot of the most fun glitches in it bad. So really, no matter how you want to look at it, whether it's the insane skating, whether it's insane glitches, or whatever, there's still some to be desired there, and those are like the highlights of the best parts. There's still very much yet to be desired having a true mega park. There's still very much to be desired of how many glitches that people were just having fun with that didn't hurt the game at all. They've been patched, and that's the best of it. When at its very much peak, in my opinion, would be about a 6 out of 10. Yeah, that's definitely not the dandiest future, but I would still ultimately rather it have some of a future because I can still enjoy the best of. Granted, my enjoyment of the best of have gotten to the point of where it's been repetitive and stuff, but to occasionally revisit it or occasional new thing that might pique my interest for a few minutes, yeah, sure. I'd rather it last 4 years than 4 months. I'll put it this at this point, but ultimately, I have a feeling there's going to be a time where we will not be able to play this game at all. So remember that too. Of all the macrotransactions that have been spent on that, as of now, there's no proof that we are going to be able to play the game forever. So all that money is eventually going to be wasted from what it looks like now. There's no proof against that, that's for sure. So that could be a few months down the road with this new owner VA deciding that. It could be years, who knows? But as of now, there's no proof that ain't gonna happen. So that's obviously not worth the on. Ultimately, I wouldn't exactly say the game is bad, but it's far, far, far from a yeehaw, that's for sure. No matter what aspect you ultimately want to look at, it could have improved, then that's even the best of. So while there's individual aspects that are just kind of an okay yeehaw, the game as a whole, far from it.